thing to say for us?
I actually, unfortunately, haven't heard of any of the top 10, but right now I think certainly, who's in the top 10 right now, Daniel?
I've got number 10 at the Minnesota Vikings, 9 New England Patriots, 8 Seattle, 7 Green Bay, and that's all we've gotten to so far.
Wow. Interesting selections right there. And honestly, the Minnesota Vikings have played tremendous ball, and same with the Seattle Seahawks, but with Seattle and Minnesota, honestly, late in the year, the quarterback situation, all it's about as far as the NFL goes is to play a quarterback. And late in the year, I don't feel like Christian Ponder or obviously Russell Wilson will be able to get it done. Two very young guys that really going into the season weren't even supposed to play as well as they have so far. And after the Vikings give up a big-time loss, I just don't see much out of Minnesota. I think you can place another team in the top 10 now. We don't know your entire list now, but certainly I feel like there's more teams with better quarterback situations and offenses than the Minnesota Vikings. And Seattle's just playing hot right now. They had a couple home games that they got a 1-point win in. Honestly, I feel like there's nothing that Seattle can do in the playoffs.
I agree with you. I don't think either of these teams are going to perform as well in the playoffs as they have in the season. In fact, I don't even have the Vikings in the playoffs. But now with Seattle, Russell Wilson, he's been hot. He's been playing some good football, and he has played in clutch situations. I saw him in the Rose Bowl. I've seen him in Wisconsin, and I think that remember, he also was drafted. He also has played a few games in the minor leagues of the MLB. So this guy, he's comfortable playing in pretty clutch situations. So I'm not counting the Seahawks out yet. I don't think that they're going to make a splash in the playoffs, but I do think that they have the potential to make the playoffs. The Vikings, however, I don't see them making the playoffs. I see 9 other teams that are better than them in the NFL. Quite possibly more. We'll see after this week. They've got, let's see who they have next. Who do the Vikings? They've got the Cardinals, so I think that should be an easy win for them. But I'm really, I said earlier in the show, I'm not really buying in on the whole Vikings thing yet, and that's why they're not higher. I've read many power rankings where they're 6 or 7, and I just, they're not. They're at best number 10.
Yeah, they're just riding a hot streak right now, and with the play of quarterback, I just don't see the Vikings running hot late. Now, right now, the same could be said for the Cardinals. Both those teams are 4-2, but they're not playing as good as their record says. I feel like both those teams are like a 500 football team. And honestly, even number 10 might be too high, but I mean, right now it's hard to not be on the Vikings bandwagon. Their defense has played spectacular. Mm-hmm. And as long as the offense scores enough points, they could make a run for the playoffs, maybe just because of how hot of a start they had.
That's true, they could. And I totally agree with you with the Cardinals. I'm not buying into that. I'm not hopping on that bandwagon just yet. I'm not seeing enough out of their offense. They're ranked 28th in passing yards and 28th in rushing yards. Not what you want to see on a team on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, 19th in opposing rushing yards and 9th in opposing passing yards. So they're on the defensive side of the ball, they're not bad, but they're not that good either.
When the offense stinks, for the Cardinals, which has been early and often, the defense can't bail them out every game, and it's starting to catch up with them. 4-0 start, and then, losses to very winnable teams, the Buffalo Bills, and obviously the St. Louis Rams aren't that high-powered of a team. So to lose both those teams, including the Rams at home, very disappointing right now for the Cards, and honestly, if they don't get wins in the next few weeks, including a tough match against the Vikings coming up this Sunday, the Cardinals, after a 4-0 start, could be right back at 500 and clawing their way to at least an above 500 record. The Cardinals are not good. Honestly, if they go 8-8, that would be a shock.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Nick. And we've got to move on to our number 6 team. If you want to stay on the line and keep on commentating, I'm fine with that. Or if you want to call in later on in the show, I'm fine with that too. or if you're done with your segment there, then that's fine. So what are you going to be saying on the line with us?
For a little bit longer, I'd like to hear, obviously, at least the number 5. I would like to hopefully have a pretty interesting. I have to wait and see just how high the Broncos are after this win. Hopefully, they make it to the top 10.
I hate to break it to you, Nick, but they did not make my top 10.
They did not make the top 10.
They did not make my top 10. I have them in my playoff simulation.
The Minnesota Vikings are number 10, and the Broncos are off the list.
You know what? I haven't seen the Broncos play great in that win, but they weren't consistent. They played a great second half, a terrible first half. I've read about the game. I did not get to see the second half. I only saw the first half, but what I saw. Sorry.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, coming from being an hour north of the San Diego area, certainly it hits hard even after it's been a few days. But the Broncos are not going to play the Chargers every week, and as much as it hurts for me to say it, the Broncos had a pretty easy game, and they're only 500, and they have a very somewhat favorable second half schedule. But if the Broncos at 3-3 play as inconsistent as they have this season, you're right, Dan. If Manning, we already have seen the best of Manning. Everyone's saying that Manning will only get better and this offense will only get better. Well, why don't we hold down the bandwagon just right now? Because we have seen some pretty inconsistent football out of this entire team. We have Demaryius Thomas with 3 fumbles in back-to-back games. And then obviously Manning, so he'll go 3 games with tremendous performance, and then he'll have a week like the Falcons where he throws 3 picks. And against the Chargers, it took almost 3 quarters from to finally fire a touchdown. So as much as it hurts for me to say it, maybe the Broncos aren't as good as everyone thinks they'll be, but in a way, maybe number 10 might be a good spot. But honestly, I can't complain with your list so far.
Yeah, if I continued with the list, I didn't have a ton of time to prepare for the show, but if I continued with the list and done all 32, I'm sure that the Broncos would have been 11 or 12. 11. They would have definitely been 11, and I don't know. I'm partially on the Vikings bandwagon. I'm not totally on there yet, but I like what I've been seeing with the Vikings so far. Now, our number 16. Sorry?
Oh, I'd say nothing. Go ahead.
Okay. We've got our number 16, San Francisco, the 49ers, 4-2 after that tough loss to New York. What do you think, Nick? I think I'm being a little bit generous with this, but others might say I'm being a little bit too conservative with it.
You're a little bit too generous. Maybe that's not a stretch because after a big-time loss to the Giants, you have to be concerned. Now, this team can be a very dominant team, and the 49ers are not the team that we saw get 26-3 to the Giants. Now, the concern with the San Francisco 49ers is their play up front offensively. Now, the defense is rock solid, and this running game can contest with anyone in the NFL, but when the 49ers have to play offensively, a powerful defensive unit. The Vikings, when they lost in their own house, the Vikings were a dominant defense. They controlled the line of scrimmage against the Niners O-line. Same thing happened against the Giants. That's a concern. That's not just a one-time appearance. The Niners couldn't make it to the Super Bowl last year because the Giants were just so dominant up front. We're seeing the same kind of issues with this offensive line. This is not the biggest offensive line. It's somewhat of an average size. Only the biggest guy there is, I believe, Joe Staley at 320. But this whole entire offense, if it gets shut down, the defense can't exactly contest and bail out the offense for the entire game. So honestly, I think number 6 is the perfect spot just for how bad that they played against the Giants.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at their rankings right now. They're 26th in passing yards, but they're first in rushing yards. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you've obviously got that really, really dominant defense. Second in opponent passing yards and ninth in opponent rushing yards. And but then you gotta look at the teams that they lost to. I mean, Minnesota, that was a dumb loss on their part. They needed to win that game. That was an easy win for them, and they gave it up. And then New York, I'm fine with that loss. I think that they had a bad game. It was a bad game. That's really how you got to sum it up. It was not a very good game for the 49ers. But I still have faith in them. I still think that they could. I still know that they're a playoff team. They're going to win their division. I have them marked here as my 4th seed, with the New York Giants, my 3rd seed in the playoffs, who they just lost to. And that was a main reason why I did like that, not having the Niners at 3 and the Giants at 4.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with your point, and it just comes down to, and you mentioned that the Niners are tremendous running the football, and mediocre at best at throwing the football, the bottom 10 in that category. Alex Smith, going into the year, we all knew he's a game manager, and it certainly showed on Sunday. And he's tremendous at making great decisions, but when he has to use his arm to throw and make passes, he's probably one of the worst as far as talent-wise goes, because he's not that accurate and he cannot throw the ball deep. And he certainly should look limited in that game, and it showed. And if the Niners can't run the football, good luck with the San Francisco Niners going deep in the playoffs. They're a talented team. Maybe they'll switch it up in the playoffs, but right now Jim Harbaugh has some big-time work on his hands with this quarterback.
Definitely. All right, Nick, we are going to move to our number 5 team. That is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. I liked what they did in that win against the Cowboys, but just for me, I think that win was a little bit too close for comfort. I'm looking, I got the box score right here. The Baltimore should have won this game by more. It was not what I had hoped to see out of the Ravens, and they've got a tough game in Houston next week. That's going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch it. But I wasn't sure about that win, but a win's a win, and I've got them at number 5.
Not to kind of ruin the show here, Daniel, but the Baltimore Ravens, I believe, is ranked way too high. They're 5-1, tremendous record, and some pretty impressive wins. But honestly, that defense took a huge hit. Ladarius Webb, one of the most underrated cornerbacks, he's out for the year. Ray Lewis out for the year. Elodie Nada's going to miss some time. They have three, perhaps, of the best players at each position, defensive line, linebacker, and secondary in the entire NFL. On their team, they're ranked on the tops of the NFL, and they're out. And honestly, that will take a big-time hit on the defense. And we saw the offense against Dallas. Under pressure, they made enough plays to win, but I don't know if Flacco in the passing game can certainly put up 30-plus against any elite defense. Now, the impressive wins that they have are against the Cowboys and the Patriots, teams that rank really low in defensive against the pass. Honestly, I think the Ravens are ranked too high, and certainly should be in the top 10, perhaps 8 or 9 is a good spot.
I agree with what you're saying with those injuries. Injuries are what can make or break a team throughout the season. However, I like what I've seen out of the Ravens. They've been playing tremendously. They've beaten some good teams. And now trust me, at this point next week, they will not be at this spot. But we don't know how they're going to play without Ray Lewis. So, but I think that was the biggest hit they could have taken, because the thing with Ray Lewis is he's more than just an amazing football player. He is the fire of this team. He brings these guys up, and he energizes them, he gets them ready for the game, and he keeps them pumped throughout. And I think that that's something that the Ravens are really going to miss with him on the sidelines.
And absolutely, just being an NFL fan, and Ray Lewis is a first, he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That is a lot. Whether he plays this year or not, or exactly how much longer he'll be able to put on a Ravens uniform, but hopefully, you just hope being an NFL fan, he can, for the Ravens, he can be out there supporting his team. Now, his injury makes him done for